Hello, friends. I'm Gordon Angelino, and I'd like to comment on Ron Paul's interview. I actually voted for Ron Paul in this primary election, even knowing that he was not going to gain the votes, simply because the time has come for the Republican Party to switch gears. Many Republicans, and I am an internationalist Republican myself, I was initially quite favorable to the idea of uprooting the jihadists wherever we could find them past Afghanistan and throughout the Middle East, but it's proving to be much more costly this time around. In part, the weakening of my support is due to the fact that the jihadists have very little ability to truly project power. The way the Soviet Union did. We had to get rid of the Soviet Union no matter what it cost, simply because they had massive tank armies and an ever-growing fleet and a few thousand nuclear weapons and the real ability to truly expand beyond their regional sphere of influence. The reason why the jihadists do so well in the Middle East is partly cultural, but partly because there's who wants other than the oil on that land. There's really hardly any water resources, hardly anything else. It's so fundamentally poor that it would be easy to rein in and kind of much more easily encircled and contained than the Soviet Union was, where Reagan had to actually spend the money to roll back the Soviet Empire. It's the Islamic world could simply be contained if we can gain alternatives to our current fixation upon oil as an energy and have some real alternative solar power in the Midwest and long distance transmission lines to the areas of the United States that don't get as much regular sunshine, and storage of that energy. Well, not so much in batteries. That's a horrible storage solution at the current time, although it could get better as time goes on, but mainly in high-pressure mines and things like that, where we can have long-term storage of the energy so that we have and of course use some fossil fuels for nighttime generation and peak hours and so forth, but to push down our fossil fuel consumption to where we can simply tell the Saudis and many of the others, no, we don't need your oil, thank you though, have a nice day, and gradually we can wean the Europeans off if our technological prowess is such. Let the Middle East choke on its own poverty, and then they may be willing, truly willing, to listen to us when we say, oh, you have to develop your intellectual assets, you have to have a culture that's not so fundamentally impoverished, and have scientific inquiry and discourse in order to improve your technological base. The Middle East is still the area of the world with the least patents per year. I mean, those few inventors that do put out patents must be going up against horrible cultural cross currents for that area of the world to be perhaps one of the lowest per year in number of patents. And that's even communist China, which I shall get to in a moment, has better record. But so we don't, this fighting in the Middle East is hampering our power, our ability to police other areas of the globe. It's a horrible drain on resources. I suggest we leave. But we have military forces deployed in such a way as attempts to break containment would be met with a great deal of force. We should probably have some military forces on the border between Iran and Iraq, but not in the cities. Not in the cities, for goodness sakes. But to keep Iran out of Iraq, but and do everything we can to contain Iran and make it impossible for people in that country to have a normal life so long as that Islamic dictatorship is in control. And unfortunately, we have to punish the majority for the actions of a minority, but very often that is the case and what needs to be done. I wish there was another way. The people of Iran don't deserve it, but if you have a alternative, I'd like to see it. We need to get rid of the mullahs. We need to get rid of this revolutionary council. We need to get rid of the home of the Islamic jihadist movement. But we can't do that right now. We're being bled dry in Iraq, and we should have more of a containment strategy. The early portions of the Cold War we had to contain and then roll back when the time arrived. The time has not arrived yet. And unlike the Soviet Union, they don't have the ability to project power the way these jihadists are kind of a local phenomenon and incredibly poor compared to the Russians. Our fighting in the Middle East has made it harder to contain China. And China has been building up a huge amount of military assets right now. I'm sure that the Thais and most of Thailand and Indochina are very worried about this huge buildup. Right now, the number of missiles that China has pointed at the peaceful nation of Taiwan is staggering and still increasing. And I'm sure China's been trying to strong-arm the negotiations via that massive buildup of IRBMs pointed at Taiwan. So we have actually short-range ballistic missiles, not intermediate, but sorry about that. We need to have a united front against some of the real problems in this world, and the Islamic jihadists rank pretty low in this matter. We can fight them in other ways, but we need to pull back and bolster our lines of defense as a nation and mend some of our alliances with the Europeans if we can. I'm not sure that we can, but there is significant differences between us and, say, the French and even the British. So I think a general pull-out, take a few measures to keep Iran from coming back, and because we don't want a unitary Islamic State. That would be the nightmare of any foreign policy objectives that we have in the region, and it would be very bad for the world in general. But we also need to do the work of containing North Korea. Fortunately, though, the Chinese have been conciliatory on that and realized North Koreans need to be dealt with and have been helping on that, so I can give the Chinese credit on that. But right now, the United States needs to do major portions of the Ron Paul program to revitalize its economy. Gold coins. Now, I don't really like his Tory ounces methodology. I'd say we should use the metric system for our gold coins, and they should be in ounces, no dollar amount prescribed on them, no extraordinary. We should try to unlink them from currency as much as possible. If you read Ron Paul's article about that, it's very, very useful that we get off this fiat money, this plague of government spending that fiat money tends to facilitate. Pull back, have majorly scale back government spending, although we have to do this in orderly fashion. We need to make sure that women and minorities and so forth don't feel threatened by this massive reduction in spending, and that it can't be construed to give many people the ability to be truly independent in the United States, which government spending and overweening spending has infantilized many portions of the population, and we need to reverse that trend, not only for the sake of freedom itself in the United States, which unfortunately we have been, many of the checks and balances that have been in the bedrock of freedom in the United States have been being destroyed by both the Clinton administrations and the Bush administrations, senior and junior. It's been horrible. So I say to you tonight that we should support many of Ron Paul's policy objectives, at least until some ability in the future gives us the opportunity we need to stop this jihadist terror. But right now we are just too overextended. I bid you all peace. Gordon Angelino, signing out.